Hey, okay. So, okay, my makeup's coming off. It's the end of the day. I've been at a conference all day. Like, y'all are wrestling with it. So, a lot of you probably know that, like, I do not support the person who created, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. She's a racist, transphobic turf, obviously. Also an anti-Semite. But and, like, my favorite character is Snape, right? I really like him. But, like, I also understand Snape is not a good dude, right? But there's been four things that have always kind of, like, bugged me about the character. And like I understand it's imperfect writing by a lot. But I was like, there's four things that just really, really bugged me about Snape. One is, what kind of kid walks up to a random girl and goes, "You're a witch"? Especially because at this point in British history, the last person to be burned as a witch had only taken place like 2 or 3 years before he'd been born. So like that seemed odd. And also just like his interaction with Petunia was also a little weird. And then I was also like, how did he like get all the way through Hogwarts in a house that like values most of his talents and gifts and not make a single friend? Like just there, and there's one other one that I'll talk about later. But I was like, just these are things that have always bothered me about his character that like just don't make any sense. Well, TikTok is slowly devolving thanks to this epic fanfic called All the Young Dudes that tries to write a story that makes Wolfstar canon. So, like, they're canonically a couple, but everything else that happens within the Harry Potter world also happens. It's a lot, and it deals with disability, and just people are behaving really badly. But there's a lot of conversation about, like, Snape, and, like, I'm not a Snape apologist. He's a terrible dude. But I just, like, decided, you know what, I'm gonna look up, like, who is he based on? Because everyone else is based on somebody that J.K. Rowling knows, right? She based Hermione on herself. Her next door neighbor, Ian Potter, became Harry Potter, etc. Her terrible ex-husband is Draco Malfoy, which I don't like her, but that's my kind of petty. Snape, Severus Snape, is based on her mother's best friend and boss, who was also her chemistry teacher, and his name is John Nettleship. They called him Sting because he was such a jerk. But here's the thing. It sounded hinky, right? It seemed a little hinky. Like, she based this terrible character on, like, a random mean high school chem teacher. So I researched. First of all, the description of Snape. There are pictures of this guy, John Nettleship. Some that he even, like, gave over to journalists. Snape is literally physically based on this guy. The nose, the pale, like, skin, the hair. She literally took this man, this, like, living adult man, and, like, took the worst description of him and immortalized it in a work of fiction. By the way, by the time she was writing this, she had cut off all contact with this dude. Meaning, he didn't actually know. But it gets worse. So, somebody finally interviewed him. Because everyone's like, okay, so this random man became this iconic character, right? He was known to be very by the book and very gruff and mean and very strict with kids and students and people he didn't know. He followed a specific script with them. That word script will be important in a minute. With people he knew, he tended to just sort of say every last little thing that was on his mind. That will also be important in a minute. And for years and years and years, that's how he lived his life. He tried to have, like, American kids. It didn't work out. He tried it twice. It wasn't that great. It didn't go well. He wasn't very good at the relationship social parts of it. Sound familiar? Keep that in your head. And then it talks about how he was bullied by Cub Scouts. If you don't know what a Cub Scout is, it's like the baby version of Boy Scouts. And then there were, like, running youths. I had to look up what that meant. Basically, the cool kids at the local sports center who, like the Marauders, physically and verbally abused him The Cub Scouts picked on him because he was odd. He wasn't like the other kids. There was something a little weird about him. But the thing that he excelled at was chemistry. He was so good at it. He has, like, I guess, the equivalent of, like, a mastery in Britain. And that was also a lot of what he was mocked and abused for and bullied for when he was a teenager by these really popular kids. Sound familiar? Okay, so, knowing all of that he was a jackass based on a script that he used very consistently. He had really bad issues keeping a relationship with people going. He tended to word vomit everything on his mind. And he was, like, bullied as a small child for being odd and not like the other kids, and as a teenager for being really good at a thing and, you know, being odd. You guys, somebody finally did an interview, right? And he's like, yeah, I have Asperger's. Like, had we known what we know now, I would have been diagnosed with Asperger. Like, that's what I have. It explains how I moved through the world. He didn't use the phrase move through the world. This bitch based, like, a character that everyone fucking hated for, like, a goddamn decade on a man with Asperger syndrome. She took his whole life story, like his physical description that was made to be horrible, hook nose, salad skin, greasy hair. She based it on a man with Asperger's. And because she had cut him off, he gave her mom the job, even though I think she was, like, mildly unqualified or something. And, like, she spent time in his office with her mom because they shared an office. So she knew this man, but she never really knew how to deal with him. He made her, like, kind of uncomfortable. So she cut off all contact with him as soon as possible. And then put him in a book. She couldn't be bothered to, like, learn about this man with Asperger's and how he moves through the world, and then made him a fucking villain. And then didn't tell him. So, like, when he found out, somebody figured it out, apparently, and told him, he was mortified for years because he was like, I thought I was strict. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't think I was that bad. This bitch. My favorite character. Like, I always knew that there was something kind of weird about him, and I knew that there had to be. She's not a good enough writer to write Snape the way he was written, right? Let's be very clear, you know. But it makes perfect sense now. Like, it makes perfect sense because she didn't actually have to write him. She lifted a man with disabilities life story with no understanding, with no conversation with him to understand, and put it in a book and made him a villain for the entire fucking world. 500 million copies sold. I know she's terrible, but, like, Jesus. Like, obviously, the character Snape, you know, still joined the Wizard Nazis, so. But now I think we can officially argue that, yep, the Marauders were jackass bullies because they're based off the real life jackass bullies. Like, I'm laughing because it's so horrifying. Like, you know, Luna Lovegood is written, obviously, as someone with autism. Obviously. I don't know who she's based on. I really don't. But, like, that was, like, a kind of a clear, like, she was trying to do something there. Whereas Snape, you know, hit some very specific markers that I think a lot of kids, especially poor kids, especially, you know, kids who've been bullied, kids who are, like, brilliant and fucked up and not kind, have always gravitated towards Snape. And now we know why. He's one of us. And that bitch is awful. You guys, this is not what I thought was going to happen. I was literally just like, God, TikTok is being, like, particularly unnuanced. I wonder, like, if there's some sort of, like, supporting, like, information about the... And it's not even, like, you have to do, like, a deep dive. Like, it's not even you have to go to, like, page 6 of Google either. It's, like, bottom of page 1 into page 2, and like they go into like the interview, and a couple people on Tumblr break it down, and it's just she really based someone who was a complete villain on a man with Asperger's, and then like literally has let the fandom like skewer this man. Like, Snape is like one of the most hated characters, and everyone loves shitting on him and being like, he's an abusive monster and he joined the Wizard Nazis. He did join the Wizard Nazis. We are not forgiving that. But it's like, but this was a real life person who had these real life situations. like Snape was like maligned. Maligned? That's the word, right? By the author. This blows my mind. I'm probably gonna do a TikTok series on this just to piss off all the kids, because like all the like Zennials and Zoomers are like perpetually like, he's the fucking worst and you can't apologize for him, and I'm about to be like, no, but J.K. Rowling deserves to apologize to him. Well, she can't. He's dead. Yeah, that's the other thing. He died of cancer in 2011 at age 71. He did eventually, like, by the way, make peace with the fact that J.K. Rowling used him to bolster her lack of writing skill. Yeah, but he died in 2011, and he made peace with it, and he actually even wrote a book about it that I'm going to see if I can get on Kindle to read. But like, yo, one of the most hated characters ever in that franchise. Like, I think maybe like people don't even hate Bellatrix the way that they hate Snape. Like, we just know that she's got, you know, a touch of the black insanity, right? No, insanity is not my word. I think it's actually in the wiki. Like, all the blacks are touched with a little insanity, including Sirius. Like, that's somewhere on the actual wiki. But, like, the pink toad. Everyone literally hates her. And then Snape is probably second. Like, people don't even necessarily hate Voldemort, because we also know that, like, hashtag that's Dumbledore's fault. Right? Snape is the only character where we're like, well, he had choices and he made the wrong ones. But no. Severus Snape is based on a man with Asperger's who is conventionally unattractive. Everything from the way he looks to his backstory as a child and as a teenager, to his adult working life out of school, to his like failed relationships. All of it is the story of John Nettleship, a man with Asperger's in a time when Asperger's wasn't a diagnosis that he would have been given. That's ableist as fuck, and it's like dark as fuck. Like, holy shit. Like Tiny Bee Queen just said, you know, she thinks that Hermione's her self-insert character, but it's actually Umbridge. Like, yeah, like, we joke about that, right? Like, she tells you, like, you know, Hermione's based on her, right? So Hermione's the heroic girl, you know, but she really is. She's Dolores Umbridge. But those are, like, writing choices, right? She had to fill out Hermione because she doesn't have the qualities of Hermione. She had to fill out Ron because I think at the time, I don't think she was married to her current husband or was even dating her current husband. So she had to fill out her ideal husband. Like, oh, so Tiny Bee Queen said, can you imagine bullying someone so hard you write them into your book as an effing villain? Right? Right? Like, this is the only character that she did not have to flesh out, that she literally lifted his story from whole cloth. Like, and there was a reason he was the way he was. Like, I'm not, and you know, I normally am like, you know, we don't make apologies for, you know, people who treat kids badly. But, like, later in life, he recognized, I did not have these particular things that other people have, and I compensated in this manner, and I realized that I apparently came off much worse than I perceived because I don't have the same perception. Holy shit. Like, that woman's evil. like we always knew she was, you know, I probably don't need to, reiterate all the ways in which this woman is racist. Dean Thomas and house elves and the description of goblins. But this is the one that kind of really? Yeah, so Tan Ponderosa, who is one of my former students, said, right, not like John joined a hate organization, right? So, it was a clear enough lift that somebody told him, right? Because she didn't start telling people who characters were based on, I think, until I was 11 or 12, so right when I think book 4-ish was maybe about to come out, or maybe right around book 3, but maybe book 4. So literally, he was enough of a direct lift in description, physically and behavior-wise, that people knew who it was. So she, did not cover her tracks. But also, what I do find interesting is that the character, when put in the world that she created, does join the wizard Nazis. And I think that's a very interesting step into her mind, right? She doesn't understand this man. She does not understand Asperger. She does not understand the choices that he made. She does not understand how all of that stuff informed his identity. So for her, all of that pushes him within her world to join a hate organization, which I think is accurate. I actually think that that's, of course, she didn't intend this because, again, she's not that good of a writer, but I think it's accurate. I think a man with Asperger's and a level of brilliance, but a lack of monetary background and a lack of social background in the wizarding world like Snape would be pushed into the arms of, the wizard Nazis. It makes perfect sense because she built a world that is from her narrow worldview, and this man exists outside of that. So it actually makes perfect sense. I'm still mad about it. He still made, a very, very bad choice, but I do understand now that a real person inserted into her fictional world was inevitably going to not be a good guy. And I actually genuinely think that the redemption of Snape, I think he deserved it, but I think it also happened probably because somebody was like, you do realize that that's a real person who knows that you've turned him into a villain. Which I also think is why he dies. I don't necessarily think it's why he gets a redemption arc. I think her redemption arc moved him away from his Aspergeriness, if you will, and towards a more socially, I hate saying normal, but average thing. But I also think she understands or understood at a certain point that he's more interesting than Harry is, honestly, at that point. And that's why she killed him. She didn't know how to deal with him. She didn't know what to do, because there's not really, he doesn't really serve a purpose. His death doesn't really serve a purpose, right? And it also doesn't make any sense because we learned previously that Arthur Weasley, there's some sort of antidote that might have actually been created by Snape, maybe. It's been a while since I read that book. That protects you, or that can help you with, basilisk bites. And then we also know that a basil or whatever the fuck can cure most poisons. Also, he's Snape. He's been a double agent for 20 years. Why would he not have a backup plan for the giant fucking snake trying to kill him? But I think for her, it was, she never got closure with John Nettleship. I think even she states in one of the interviews, if my reading's not mistaken, is that, she didn't know how to have a closure conversation, so she couldn't write one for Harry. She couldn't have, a sick Snape somewhere getting better and then becoming a hero, and what would it mean? I don't think she was capable of writing that because she wasn't capable of having an iota of, human understanding for John Nettleship, never mind Snape. Tan Ponderosa also said she steered him as neurotypical. Yes. So, Snape was John Nettleship until we get to the moment of his death, right? Also, this also makes more sense, honestly, why he was willing to make the unbreakable vow with Bellatrix and Mama Malfoy. Narcissa, there you go, Mama Malfoy. He understood the rules of being a Death Eater, but he also understood the rules of being a Malfoy, right? He'd known them long enough. I still argue that he was Draco's godfather. It is something that actually canonically makes sense. It also makes sense why he would make the unbreakable vow for Draco. I mean, Bellatrix is nuts, but Bellatrix was also, defying Voldemort, so he could have been like, fuck you. And said, no, I'm not doing it, and she really wouldn't have been able to do anything, right? Because she couldn't have killed him because he was, part of Voldemort's inner circle at that point and was needed. So I think that he understood how that family worked and what that structure was, and, it was a structure. I think also the Death Eaters 2 was a thing for him, it was a structure. Which sounds terrible, but, I've met quite a few people who have Asperger's who do really, really well with things that have, rules and regulations and ranks, and, they're great at that. I say they, but, Team Asperger. I got diagnosed in college, so, I feel it. But, yeah, I'm, digressing, but, a lot of Snape now makes so much sense when you realize that he is a man with Asperger's. A real-life man with Asperger's. A real-life, hook-nosed, sallow-skinned, greasy, long-haired chemistry teacher with Asperger's. God, I hate this woman. But yeah, I'm probably going to make a TikTok series, but that's harder to do because I have to fucking close caption, and my brain doesn't handle closed captioning anything well. I'm going to take this video, though, and upload it onto YouTube. But yeah, I'm going to make a TikTok series in 1 minute bits, which is going to suck. But, yeah. This is all because there was, a really shitty fanfiction called All the Young Dudes, where someone tried to, step into her shitty book universe, that was purposely designed to break up Wolfstar, or any hint of Wolfstar, but still, this writer still wanted to, make that canon, and it took over TikTok to the point that it pissed me off, and I wanted to be who is Snape based on some of these people's, wild and horrible interpretations of him, in this fic, All the Young Dudes, and I discovered a new layer of fucking J.K. Rowling's awfulness. She took a man's whole life story. I hate everything. Okay, I'm gonna go now. But yeah, you can look up John Nettleship, who is known as Stinger, because his name was Nettle, and he was kind of a jerk. But I think the best part of it, though, is, he was so clear, and several articles have been yeah, he had a script for how he dealt with people. A script. Somebody who worked with kids with autism and Asperger's, one of the things that we were taught to try to break is them scripting, which I think is horrifying. I didn't like anything having to do with the job I had where I was teaching kids, except for teaching them how to swim. That was great, but all of the behavioral stuff, I was this feels abusive and awful. But anyway, yeah, Severus Snape, Asperger's. Yep, so I'm gonna go now, but feel free to share this video far and wide. See ya. How do I get out of here?